From MTN, the Montana Television Network, this is Face the State.
Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of Face the State on the Montana Television Network. I'm Mike Dennison, the Chief Political Reporter for MTN. In just 11 days, Montanans will choose their next and only congressman in a special election on Thursday, May 25th. The winner of this election will fill a seat that has been vacant since March 1st, when Republican Ryan Zinke resigned to become U.S. Interior Secretary. 3 men are competing for this seat. Republican Greg Gianforte, a businessman from Bozeman, Democrat Rob Quist, a musician originally from Cutbank, and our guest this morning, Libertarian Mark Wicks, a rancher and farmer from Inverness, which is a community on the High Line west of Havre. I'm also joined today by our co-host, Mikenzie Frost, an anchor and reporter at KTVH-TV in Helena. This morning, Mikenzie and I will be talking with Mr. Wicks about his candidacy, the campaign, and whether voters should consider choosing the Libertarian candidate in the race. Mr. Wicks, welcome to the program. Let's start off by introducing yourself a little bit more to Montana voters. Tell us about your professional background, how you got into politics, and also why you're a Libertarian.
Okay. Well, I was raised up on the High Line, been here my entire life except for, some time away for college. I was in the Army Reserves down here in Helena actually for a couple of years. But I went to school in Bozeman, went to school for a history and technology education degree. I have a degree in aviation maintenance technology. I've written a book that went over very well. It's not very well known, but everybody that reads it really likes it. And I've ran a couple small businesses. I've set up some Christmas stores, and I run a route that sells fruit from across eastern Montana. We do that every summer. So I have a lot of business experience. I've worked in the Bakken, so I have experience in the energy field. I have a very wide array of experiences to bring to the state of Montana. And I'm just sick of politics as it is, and Montana needs a voice that's talking for Montana, not the Republican Party or the Democratic Party.
And so you've not run for office before,
no.
Correct? And why not? Why haven't you run for something like the legislature or the school board or county commission?
Well, I've been busy raising my kids and taking care of my family, chasing my kids down the road to the volleyball games and basketball games, and just living your typical Montana life where I didn't have the time to do that. I wanted to do it, but it just wasn't in the cards at the time.
Now let's talk about the convention that you were nominated in. It was a small convention. How exactly did it work, and how many delegates were there when it all happened?
Okay, delegates, there were 16 voting delegates. I think we had upwards of about 80 people attending the convention. It was a good turnout. We had some good candidates come up there. There were 4 that were very good candidates and would have done well representing Montana, and I think you'll see some of them back in the future. They're pretty excited about getting more into politics. And the Libertarian Party is going to grow in this state, and it's not going to be the minor third party it was. We're going to make this thing go. People are ready for a change.
Now, what have you done since getting nominated by the Libertarian Party? What have you done so far to campaign for this seat?
Okay. I've spent a lot of time on Facebook because that's the medium I can afford. I've been out on the road trying to get out as much as I can. But without a party that has a lot of connections like the other ones do, it's very hard for me to get out there and get in front of a lot of people at once. So I've been to some gun shows, which I've been a vendor at gun shows for 20 plus years, and so people know me there, and they get to find out who I am and what I'm running for, and they're receptive to it. They're sick of it as politics as usual as everybody else.
Are you able to run any broadcast ads or ads anywhere at all?
Not at this time, but momentum has really been growing since the debate that I was in. People saw me, liked what I had to say, and are getting very excited. And so the support that I've seen growing is amazing. All over the state, even all over the country, I have people that are calling me and just so excited to see a Libertarian voice that's in there and doing well. So it's exciting.
Let's talk about the practical effect of voting for you. Let's say, as our only congressman, you're elected, you go back to Washington, D.C., you'll be the only Libertarian in Congress. How are you going to interact with the power structure, the existing party structure, and get things done that you'd like to do?
Well, that's a good question, because I've thought about that myself. I can be a channel between the two parties, but something that's a little more important is if they get my support, they get to go out there and say they have bipartisan support.
And I'm just curious, who did you support for president in the last election?
I've caught a lot of flack for this. I did support Trump only because I had seen the donations coming into the Clinton Foundation, and I was very worried about what she was going to do for our government because it looked like it was up for sale, and we can't have that institutionalized into our federal government. It was just too important.
Well, the majority of Montanans, of course, agreed with you on that vote.
Right.
So it's not like you're way out of school. Anyways, yeah.
Outnumbered.
Yeah.
So let's say if you are elected, what would you name as the top 3 priorities in Congress that you'd like to see get done right away?
Okay, I would like to see some fiscal responsibility come back into play. I know everybody talks about it, but right now they're going out there and they're ignoring it once it gets there. And people are tired of that. We have to start doing what we say we're going to do. I feel like the voters are almost in an abusive relationship, that they get promised one thing during the campaign, and as soon as they get back to Washington, we're cheated on. And we have to keep coming back to the same abusive spouse that's going to keep treating us the same. So this is the chance for Montanans to get out of an abusive relationship.
Now, you mentioned that as one priority. What are some other ones besides? We'll come back and talk more about cutting the budget, but what are a couple other things that you're interested in doing as a congressman? Okay.
Well, another thing, and I know overall Montanans aren't as excited about, but we need to bring the judicial branch back into control. That's one of the jobs of Congress, is to keep Congress, or the judicial branch, from, they need to interpret the law. Their job is not to make law. And we have Supreme Court judges and district court judges that are making the law. And Congress has the ability to impeach these judges. And when they make their own law up, they need to be impeached. So that's one of the big things.
What's another one? What else would you like to see? We talk a little bit about, you've said that nothing gets done in Congress. And what exactly would you say that doesn't get done? What's one thing notably you see where Congress has failed?
Well, healthcare has been a terrible, terrible debate. They're fighting back and forth, and first one party pushes a bill out there and said it was perfect, we can't change anything, and as soon as the administration's change, all of a sudden, well, maybe we could compromise a little. And then the Republicans come in with a plan that isn't so much different and want to pass that. But at the end of the day, is health care fixed? We didn't bring any tort reform in. We didn't do anything about pricing. So we have to start addressing these. But there's not a lot of incentive for politicians to actually solve the problem. They'd rather get donations from lobbyists and keep getting money poured into their campaigns to keep fighting this. So they don't really care if it gets solved as long as the money's pouring in.
Now, in healthcare, you've said that we should get rid of the Affordable Care Act.
Yes.
And of course, there is a bill that has passed the House so far, and I don't know what its fate will be in the Senate. But you've also said that you want to keep Medicare and Medicaid. That's it, with nothing else to make healthcare more affordable or accessible?
I think we should make sure that if pharmacy companies are selling their drugs outside the country, that they have to sell them at the same price to us. It's absolutely insane that they sell them cheap in Canada and we can't get them for the same price here. You know, everybody would say that's not fair, but yet that's what's going on. I'd like to see people be able to organize in group plans, to get different organizations able to join that, so they have buying power. And that would go a long way. So we need to cross state borders with insurance plans. You know, there's a lot of stuff that can be done, and but you have to be willing to do it.
Now, do you think that the plan, of course, that was passed by the House, a week or so ago, is that something you would support, or do you see problems with that particular plan?
I haven't had a chance to dig into it yet. It's been such a moving target that what they say today and what it is tomorrow is two different things. So I can't give you a good comment on it.
Okay.
Now let's go back to the prescription drugs quickly, because you said selling them out. You want to make it so pharmaceutical companies won't be able to sell the drugs cheaper outside the United States. If that's the case, how exactly will that drive pharmaceutical prices down across the board? If everything is the same, how would that equalize it?
If they want to sell their drugs in the rest of the world, they're going to have to drop their prices here.
Let's go back to when you're talking about balancing the budget and spending. You look at the Libertarian Party platform. It says that we need to just slash spending. The government does way too much. I'm sure you know that. Tell me where you would cut the budget. Right now, if we're going to cut the budget down to balance it, we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars. Where would you start?
Well, there's a lot of waste going on. When we see Department of Consumer Protection, they're building a building out. Well, they're leasing a building. They've spent $500 per square foot on a leased building to make their, what I call their castle, their headquarters back there. And instead of building a simple building to work out of, these organizations or bureaus seem to think they have to have a castle. Homeland Security's building is up to $1.5 billion now that they've spent on theirs. They're not being, the oversight isn't there. But there's every program, at least the large ones, have a lot of places where money can be cut out of them. The problem is, as soon as we start trying to do little cuts, they pull the bureaucratic shuffle. And like with the military, if we cut them even 1%, the first thing they're going to do is soldiers aren't going to have hot meals in the field, and there's not going to be any bullets to practice with. That's just a typical bureaucratic thing. They're going to hit it where it hurts and try and make us scream uncle.
Now, you mentioned military spending, which of course is a huge chunk of our budget. Like more than half of the discretionary spending is $600 billion a year. As a libertarian, are you for cutting that budget, and how would you do it? I mean, both your opponents are saying, "Oh no, we can't cut that. We should increase it." But I'm guessing you may not agree.
Well, I think they're getting plenty of money. We should probably be looking at spending it wiser than what they're doing. It is such a big budget. It's easy to not oversee what's going on in it. There's some programs that I would like to look into a little closer, and I couldn't give you any specifics, but get into them and see where the waste is, bring them down. I know there's some big programs they're running. The cost overruns are huge. I was visiting with a guy about working on missile silos, and he says the original contract is pretty reasonable, but then they have these clauses in the contracts for every little thing that goes on, and by the time the contract's done, the price is nowhere near what it was contracted for. And that seems to be pretty typical.
Now, another platform libertarians have is an abolishment of the federal income tax. And so, or on income taxes and federal income taxes in general. Is that something you favor, and how exactly would you design a tax system?
Well, wouldn't it be nice if we could just do away with taxes? It'd be wonderful, but we have to live in the reality of today that if we want services, we have to pay taxes. And I differ from the Libertarian Party on my position there, but that's okay. In the Libertarian Party, we're free to have our own thoughts. We're free to think our own thoughts and do what we want. And hopefully we can support each other, that we have the freedom of speech, the freedom of thought to do that. I want taxes to be spent wisely. If I have to have my money taken from me without my consent, I want it to be spent well. I don't want it wasted. I don't want to see VA buses with graphics on the side that cost $20,000. That just burns me to see spending like that. It's wasteful. So I want it spent well. And so that's how I feel about taxes. If we have to pay them, they need to be spent well.
But is there any change in the tax system that you would advocate for? Of course, we're going to have a tax proposal from President Trump before Congress. Surely you've seen some of the elements of that. I'm just wondering, when you look at that, do you think, I like this, or do you want to try something more different than what he's proposing?
Well, I agree with dropping the corporate tax rate down to a lower level, where that's going to end up 15, 17%, something like that. Because it's just like, if I have a business here in Montana, but I can go, and I'm paying 35% tax, if I can go to Wyoming and pay 15% tax and still do my work in Montana, well, guess what? I'm heading down the interstate to Wyoming. And that's just common sense. So we have to decide, do we want 15% of something, or do we want 0% of nothing? The other thing I'm looking at is what a senior citizen can earn above and beyond their Social Security taxes without having their Social Security just absolutely slashed. And I think it's really wrong that a senior citizen that saves their money and gets a retirement plan put together and does well, that when they retire, that the money that they put into Social Security is almost entirely taxed away from them. If you make over $44,000 a year in income, as a senior citizen, they tax your Social Security 85%. It's almost not worth going in and applying for the Social Security when they take so much away.
Now let's stay on the topic of Social Security, and the party platform says privatization is the way to go. Is that something you differ with the party on as well?
I do. I think there's plenty of money in the stock market. In fact, I think there's way too much money in the stock market chasing not enough stocks and bonds and investments. And I think putting the Social Security money in there is going to inflate it to even higher levels than it is now, and then when it does drop again, we are going to be in a worse situation than we are now.
And so it sounds like you'd like to strengthen and bolster the current system that we have in Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
I will never vote to take money out of Social Security or Medicare. I think we paid for it. We deserve to get it.
Okay. Now, at the debate a couple weeks ago, you said you're a huge supporter of the Second Amendment. Does that mean that you think there should be no restrictions on ownership of firearms? What does that mean exactly in terms of what's allowed under the Constitution and what you think we should have?
Well, that's a fair question and a good question. I think things are pretty good where they're at right now. There's a couple things I would like to change. There is a bill to allow silencers or sound suppressors. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not like on TV where you hear the psh, psh, psh. That doesn't happen. That's not how they work. But as a shooter, I hate shooting and having my ears ringing when I'm done. If I see a coyote, I jump out and shoot. My ears are ringing for the rest of the day. So I'd like something to dampen the sound, and it's good for wildlife. If you're not up in the mountains, making it sound like World War II up in the mountains. And so it's good for the neighbors that don't have to listen to you shoot. It's good for the wildlife, and it doesn't increase crime anyway. And it's just one less thing that the government has to worry about.
And now it sounded like, just from your comments earlier, that in terms of any new restrictions on ownership or registration, that you would oppose those?
Yes.
Okay.
Does that mean talking about any sort of new restrictions like a registry? I know that's been kind of an issue that's been brought up in other campaigns, a gun registry. Where do you stand on that?
I think it'd be an absolute waste of time and against the Second Amendment. The right to defend yourself, I believe, goes even beyond the Constitution. I think that's one of your most basic rights, followed closely by free speech. If you don't have those, what's left?
Let's talk a little bit about immigration policy, which isn't quite the hot topic here in Montana as it is perhaps in the southern part of the country. But you made some comments at the debate about how you would approach that in terms of benefits for illegal aliens. If you could devise a policy for the country, what would be 2 or 3 of the principles that you'd like to have that we don't have now?
Okay, well, I would like to make sure that benefits are not going to illegal aliens. That would save a lot in the budget right now. I've seen estimates of over $100 billion in savings a year if we're not paying for benefits. Of course, nobody can really track down that number to find out what it really is, but it makes sense to me that if you're paying HUD housing and food stamps and giving health care to people that aren't citizens, that you're spending a lot of money that you shouldn't. Now, we need, yes, there's a need to bring workers into this country to work in the fields. I think we can do better to get a better system in place so they can come and work and go home without the fear of not being able to get back. I think we need to work on that. There's good people that come in from other countries that work. We like them. I like them. We need them here. But let's make sure that that's what's happening.
Now, what would you do to discourage people from coming into the United States illegally?
Well, taking the benefits away is the biggest thing. I don't care what fence we put up there. If they want in, they're going to get in. It's just a fact of life. We've got too big a border to turn it into Alcatraz Island by any means. But enforcement needs to be enforced. I have a lot of friends that are in the Border Patrol. They've been very frustrated for the last 8 years. They haven't been allowed to do their job. Frankly, it was a waste of money having them out there if they weren't allowed to do what the law said. So they're feeling a little better right now, which is good. Their morale was pretty low. But there's some guys there that are doing a good job, and the ones we have up in Havre sector are some amazing guys that come in there. They work with 4-H and Boy Scouts, and we're glad to have them in our community.
Now we're getting down toward the end of our show. We still have a few minutes left, and we still have a few more questions on our list here, but I'm just wondering, is there anything that we haven't asked you that you think is important that you'd like to say about in terms of what you stand for and what your campaign stands for, and why you think you're a good choice?
Well, veterans care is very important to me. I think that veterans should be given a Medicare card so that they can go in and get treatment at any hospital, not having to be driving all over the state to get treatment and waiting on the line to get treatment. That's really important with me. I would like to phase out the Department of Education so that they can block grant the money to the states and we can start teaching our kids the way they need to be taught. We have, even in Montana, the Class A school and the Class C school are very different, and trying to run them all from Washington is a mistake. So I'd like to see the block education money be granted to the states, and then we can copy states that find good solutions.
Okay. You also said, I think during the debate, that we're already in too many countries fighting wars. Which wars would you like us to stop fighting?
Oh, in a perfect world, all of them. I realize that's not overly realistic, but I don't like our sons and daughters and our friends coming home from war with their lives torn apart, and nobody likes that. So I would like to see us stay out of conflicts that don't involve us. We need to maybe rely a little bit more on the rest of the world and let them do some of the heavy lifting. I mean, I think it's crazy that we still have bases in countries that we fought a war in 60, 70 years ago. Maybe we can solve some problems, get some of those guys home before our economy crushes underneath the debt.
Now, what does that look like in terms of the United States fighting the war on terrorism right now, and how would you like us to pull back from that, if at all?
I don't know if we really can. Try and keep boots off the ground, try and keep them in the countries where they're at so that they're not ending up inside our borders where they can really do damage. But I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon.
We haven't talked about drug policy either, which is kind of a libertarian thing about easing the war on drugs and not sending everyone to prison. Give us an idea of what a federal drug policy looks like that would be a good one in your mind, and how to be carried out. Okay,
well, as I've said before, I'm for legalizing marijuana because anybody that wants to smoke pot has pot. It hasn't stopped anybody. So let's just quit pretending that it's working, and then we can put those resources to other uses. We can generate tax money off the marijuana. I mean, there won't be money going to crime lords. I think it's a very positive thing. But I think we could take our law enforcement and direct them towards the harder drugs that are causing the chaos in our cities. And even here in Montana, meth is such a horrible thing. I would love to see meth brought down, just gone. And so if we could turn our resources to that, that would be wonderful in my eyes.
Going back to talking about Congress, I didn't ask you before, when you get there and let's say you win, are you going to caucus with Republicans or Democrats?
I would imagine with the Republicans, I tend to lean more conservative, but I'm open to talking with both parties. I don't think just going out there and stating a position is the wrong thing. I feel like I'm a judge, that I have to decide what is right. I can't go out there with preconceived notions of everything. We have to start looking at the facts and then deciding, and not being told by senators from New York and representatives from California what our vote is.
And also you'd be 1 out of 435 and low man on the totem pole. How are you going to build coalitions to get things done for Montana?
Well, most of my ideas are not new. I know there's lots of representatives out there that have came in with the same ideas. They've got the bills written, they're sitting on the back burner, and I need to go to them and push them to get those bills out on the floor. They need a little support from outside their party.
Now let's talk a little bit about President Trump's current travel ban and apply to 7 Muslim-majority countries. Do you think that should be extended to anyone else, or should it be left at those 7?
Well,
or at all?
Well, he had, from everything I've heard, that he had the authority to do that. From what I've read, Congress passed a law, gave him the authority. Now, I think as time has drug on, that we should have had the vetting in place that he's looking for. He's had time to do that. So if they haven't been doing it in the meantime, they're not doing their job.
Do you agree with this travel ban, though? Do you think that that's something?
I think if we don't know who's coming in, and that's very possible, I think that's very hard to vet from those countries, that we needed to stop it and look at it and figure out what was going on. And like I said, by now we should have those policies in place, or if we can't get them in place, maybe they have to stay out.
Is there anything, we haven't talked much about the economy in Montana, anything you think Congress should be doing to help the economy in Montana, or that you could do as a congressman?
Well, I think the biggest thing is for agriculture is hemp. $33 billion industry that we're completely missing out on. That's about 8% of what our egg budget or egg economy is right now. It'd be a huge boost. And could you imagine all those small communities in eastern Montana having some refining processes? It'd be great. There'd be jobs in the small communities, and we need that in the small towns.
Thanks, Mark. I think we're going to end on that note there, and talking about the hemp in Montana. But we talked about a lot of things this morning. I really like to thank Mr. Wicks, the Libertarian candidate for the U.S. House special election coming up, for being our guest. I'd like to thank my co-host, Mikenzie Frost, as well. And also, I'd like to remind everyone out there to vote 11 days from now, May 25th. Thanks for joining us on Face the State.
You've been watching Face the State, a presentation of MTN, the Montana Television Network.